so I hope when I edit this the rain isn't too loud. But today I wanted to talk about the Tevinter Nights book because I have now finished it. I've read all the chapters. Some of them I read twice, and there's a lot of info in this book. There's a lot of great stories. There's a lot of expansion on factions that we may not have had much information on in the Dragon Age universe in books or games. And there is also a potential setup of what's coming for Dragon Age 4. So Tevinter Nights is everything that I wanted it to be. It's 15 different tales of stories happening either pre-Trespasser or post-Trespasser. A lot of these stories take place after Trespasser, which is really cool because we get to know what's going on in Thedas now and what's currently being done by the Inquisition and other nations in terms of Solus and what his plans are. Some of these chapters actually connect to each other, not in terms of ongoing story, but sometimes we might have a character from Tevinter mention something that happened that we've read in another story in Navarra. I love the feeling of everything being connected in a way. So they are different tales, they may happen at different times, but this is all the same world, and most of it is something that we could look forward to seeing in the next game. Characters that may be companions or coming back for side quests, consequences that characters stumbled upon in this book that we may have to deal with in the next game. Tevinter Nights covers a lot of Thedas that I think everyone's been asking to see more of. So of course we go to Tevinter, we go to Navarra, we go to Antiva, we go to the Arlathan Forest. We see a bit more of the Inquisition and what the Inquisition has been up to. Some of my favorite chapters of the book, it's really hard choosing a few. I can't just choose a few because I liked so many, but there is Down Among the Dead, which takes place in Navarra, which is about the Mortalitazi. Then The Horror of Hormak, which I liked because it involved the Grey Wardens, as well as a really interesting storyline setup of something that we could see more of in the next game or in another book. Callback I really liked because of its connection to Skyhold. I really like Luck in the Gardens because it involved Dorian and Mayveris, as well as I just liked the main character of that story, and it also introduced us to another faction or group of people that we haven't really heard of called the Lords of Fortune. I really liked Murder by Death Mages because this was a connection to one of the Inquisitor's agents who was just a multiplayer character in the game of Inquisition, but you really got to explore the backstory of this character, which I love, like when NPCs or characters that we don't really know much about have like a storyline behind them, have a purpose for why they're doing what they're doing. So I really liked that chapter. The Streets of Minrathous I really liked again because of the main character. I liked a lot of these because of the characters and where the stories take place. The Wigmaker job I really liked. I love Lucinus and his cousin. I just love that storyline. I loved the weirdness of what was going on in Verantium. It's exactly kind of what I expect those magisters to be up to. I think Lucinus is a character that I'd love to see a companion in Dragon Age 4. Genitivi dies in the end. I liked again because I liked that it was connected to Fen'Harel and the Inquisition, as well as I like how the story was about the Bard film telling a story. Eight Little Talons I liked a lot because it just felt like such a big story, a mystery, as well as I really like to know more about the crows and the politics and the drama of it all, and I like to just see them have a bigger role in Dragon Age and Thedas, and half up front I liked because I liked the characters again, and I liked it introduced us to a Fen'Harel agent, which was kind of sad what happened to them. And of course I really liked the last chapter, Dreadwolf Thankyou, not only because it had Solus sitting at that table the whole time, just because I like the thought of different spies all coming together, the Inquisition still being involved, and it's like the trickster that we've heard that the Dreadwolf is. He was shown here, and I just like seeing that side to Solus, and he is becoming more of what the stories that we have read about him, but also showing a little bit of regret and the self that we've known him in Inquisition. So in this book there are different creatures, characters, and going on abouts that I wanted to just talk about, just because I thought they were interesting. So the first one I wanted to talk about were the Mortalitazi. So the Mortalitazi are a faction of mages in Navarra. They hold a lot of power, even potential sway over the king of Navarra, as well as it seems like they are vying for power to take over the throne. They are they have a lot of influence in Navarra, because not only because of their study of magic, but also because they take care of the dead. It is tradition in Navarra to have the Mortalitazi look after you when you die. So we have 2 chapters mentioning the Mortalitazi heavily, or at least having a influence in that story. One is Down Among the Dead, which features Audric, who is a guard captain, but he doesn't know it, he's actually dead, and a faction within the Mortalitazi called the Morn Watchers, who deal with the dead that aren't fully rested, and cases like that. They help Audric kind of find his place and help him come to the realization of he actually died. That chapter was really cool because we got to go to the Grand Necropolis. We got to see more of where Cassandra Pentecost comes from, what she's kind of told us about the Mortalitazi and Navarra, and it's cool to explore a different part of Thedas that we haven't been to before. It has a different feel to it, the culture is different rules. So that story was really cool because it got to show us the good things that the Mortalitazi can do, as well as their treatment of the dead and how respectful the Morn Watchers are of the dead. But in another story called Murder by Death Mages, also connected to the Mortalitazi, this story was awesome because it involved one of the Inquisition's agents, who is a multiplayer character we know as Sidonie. What I really liked about this story is we got to know more of this character, this, to me, like an NPC that is just an NPC, and we got to see that they have a backstory, and that backstory influences their decisions and influences the Inquisition's results. But I like that story because it showed through the eyes of Sidonie, which I imagine a lot of players can feel the same way. Sidonie was watching as Navarra nobles rivaled for power and status, and that's all it was really about. And in that story it was about the Mortalitazi trying to gain more influence over the nobles. And still, even with everything going on in Thedas, it seems like Navarra is still very unstable. There are still 2 noble families fighting over who is the best and who's going to be the heir of the throne. It is all just very corrupt, and it's kind of interesting to see the Mortalitazi trying to gain the upper hand from planting this corruption within Navarra. So I wonder if that's going to have a bigger, if they're going to have a bigger part of Dragon Age 4. Are the Mortalitazi going to take over the throne? There is just so much corruption in Navarra and in Tevinter, so it's just going to be interesting to see how these nations are going to unite or somehow find stability with Solus's plans, as well as the Kyun invading. So the next story I just wanted to touch upon, again, I've already made a video about this story, but the Horror of Hormak, just because what Ramesh found seems to be potentially connected to the elven gods, to Gillinan, and there are, was it 11 other of these creatures among Thedas. So this is such a big, I don't know if revelation is the right word, but knowing that knowing that there's these creatures that the elves once created, actually now we know that they are alive. What happens if all these creatures come out? Who was this she that the centipede creature was mentioning? Is it Gillinan? Is it another elven god? Are they still influencing these creatures? Are these creatures waiting for orders, or are they currently doing their master's bidding, going out and killing creatures, bringing them back and making them into a bigger army? I don't know if it's to maybe go against Solus, or just for their own personal gain to take over Thedas. But whatever it is, I feel like we're going to see more of these creatures, or at least of this story, in the next Dragon Age game. I'm so curious if Solus knows about these creatures. If it was connected to Gillinan, that she, or maybe another elven god, made these creatures, that you would think that Solus would know that these creatures are alive. Maybe he just doesn't think they're much of a threat. But it's also interesting that the Grey Wardens know about these creatures. So I wonder if the Grey Wardens are going to have a big part to play in the future of this storyline. It would be so cool to see Ramesh again. I would love to see him again, and to see him being in charge of this investigation, maybe in a side quest, in a main quest, I don't know. It seems like whatever these creatures are part of, it's pretty important and pretty threatening. Thedas has a lot going on right now. There's like so many threats. What I wanted to talk about next was a creature in the story Luck in the Gardens, called the Cackle Rex. It is a creature we haven't really seen before. Apparently it's not a demon or spirit. Apparently necromancers know of these creatures, and that it could have been a magical experiment gone wrong. It was hiding underneath Minrathous, in caves in the sewer system. But the Cackle Rex had massive tentacles. It was like a big creature, monster. Its tentacle had like human ordinary eyes on them. It had many voices within them. It kept repeating like, come join me, or come be with me and live inside me. It seems to absorb people. And it also had these creepy like comments saying things are rising. I don't know if this was to do with Solus's plans. It's interesting that this creature comes out now. I mean, it could have, unless it's been killing people for years, but was this creature awakened recently in the post-Trespasser timeline? Whatever it is, I wonder if there are more of them in Thedas, and I wonder if these creatures are also connected to the elves. So, of course, there are a lot of tales in this book that take place in Tevinter, in different parts of Tevinter. One of them is a story called The Streets of Minrathous, where a private investigator, Neve, uncovers a Venatori plot. So we know that the Venatori are still existing, and apparently they are still wanting to continue Corypheus's work. One of Corypheus's plans were to unleash a demon that is resting under the city of Minrathous, to take control of Minrathous. There are 8 seals that each of these Venatori have. These seals are used to unlock the demon. Corypheus was meant to unlock the demon, but one of the blood mages ended up doing it herself, or tried to. I thought it was interesting, not surprising of course, that they have a demon resting underneath that city. It's hilarious, the fact that I think Neve says something like people, or the people in charge, the Templars, will just like forget about this story and not really mention it to anyone because they don't want to scare other people in Tevinter that the Venatori still have some power. There's just so much corruption and scandal, and it's just all about which houses come out on top. It's all about being the best and putting your best face forward and appearing to be in control. They kind of just like cover up the deaths of their families to hide scandals. And the deaths of their families aren't even that important because the thought of their reputation being in ruins is so much more higher than caring about or investigating the death of their family and finding out what the truth actually is. I wonder if this demon is like a normal demon, like a demon of how we sin of regret, or is it something more powerful? Is it something more ancient? Could it be something connected to the old gods? Could it be something connected to the elves that the elves were trying to hide? Maybe the Tevinter Magisters conjured this demon or summoned this demon. Whatever it is, it's good to know that there's a scary giant demon under Minrathous, and that's not even like the scariest thing. It's actually the people and the corruption that is the scariest thing in that nation. Next, I wanted to talk about the Kyun and the Ben Hassarath and the Antum, because they seem to be the ones really putting their foot forward to try and stop Solus, even having more information on Solus than the Inquisition do. And the Kyun are invading, or the Antum are invading Tevinter, Navarra and Tiva. They are threatening to take over all these nations, or not just threatening, are taking over cities even, but the cities are kind of giving themselves up and agreeing to live by the Kyun. It seems like the Canary are going to be a formidable foe against Solus, just because the amount of power they have, as well as the Ben Hassarath spies who are currently investigating elven relics and artifacts. It is said that they are trying to stay neutral in this war against Tevinter and Navarra. So we do see the Antum and the Ben Hassarath kind of having different values, and the Antum being more military, more brutish. They're kind of being what the stereotypical Canary people thought them to be, and invading and taking people as slaves. So the Antum are focused more on taking over and doing whatever they can to get to their goal, where the Ben Hassarath want to stay neutral but want to find as much information they can on Solus, just in case they feel threatened by Solus. I'm sure they already do, since they're gathering so much information on him, but you know there's something coming from them. I wonder if the Antum and the Ben Hassarath in the next game will go against each other because of their different values. That would be really cool to see. I like the thought of Canary who are not the stereotypical brutish murderers that the rest of Thedas believes the Canary to be. I like having a Canary who is smart and willing to have a conversation and think things through. Next, I wanted to talk about the Inquisition and what they're currently doing. The Inquisitor and Inquisition is mentioned a few times in this story, which I love. I love that so much. I love there being a connection to something that the player has played, because there's emotion in what the player has played. So I love like hearing that what our Inquisitor did, even though they can't be specific because everyone made different choices, but specific enough to mention the Inquisitor having an impact in the whole of Thedas. I love characters mentioning that, whether it's good or bad, whether they look up to the Inquisitor like a glorious hero and something maybe scary or very powerful, or something that is trying to make the world better. But we have characters in this game, like in Half Up Front, which are directed to a dwarf in Kirkwall, which I imagine is Varric. They are directed to go to him to try and help and make the world better, or help out in this war. We also have, in Genitivity Dies in the End, a group of scholars commissioned by the inner circle of the Inquisition to go and find elven ruins, which they find the shattered library, and try and find information on the elven pantheon, which I thought was really interesting. I was like, yes, I really still want to know more about these elven gods, even though they are evil. We still don't know too much about them, except for what Solus has told us and the horrible things that they did. So the Inquisition, it is mentioned in this, has been like disbanded. If it hasn't been disbanded, it is known that the Inquisition is no more, but the Inquisition's inner circle as well as the Inquisitor are working underground. The Inquisitor has agents, but Solus may have infiltrated the Inquisition with his agents. Probably the Canary or Ben Hasselhoff have agents, so everyone has agents everywhere. But it's good to know that the Inquisition are still working underground. It's good to know that the Inquisitor isn't retired, and that the inner circle is still doing their best to try and stop Solus, like especially in the Dreadwolf Thankyou. Charter says that Solus is not going to stop himself, so it almost directly says that the Inquisition are going to be hopefully the ones to be able to stop or redeem Solus. In terms of Solus's future and Solus's plans and what Solus is currently up to in this book, he has his agents, which they wear robes with embroidery no one can recognize. These agents also follow death before capture, so they commit suicide before being captured, so they don't reveal any plans, which I think is terrible. It's kind of weird to see Solus be okay with this, and I'm assuming the reason that he's okay with this is because he doesn't see people as people. But then I just thought to myself, but it says he's kind of sympathetic to elves. I don't know if these agents are just like crazy. Are these agents like crazy elves who are like, yes, glory to the Elven Empire, and Solus is just like, okay, just yeah, do that. Or like, is Solus like, you have to do this? It's interesting to now know what Solus's or Fenrirel's agents are actually like. I imagine not all of them are crazy. I imagine some of them have sense still. Maybe they're working with Fenrirel because they want to bring back the elves. Maybe some of them are spies, spying on Fenrirel. Whatever Solus plans to do, it's not good. I'm very curious on how we're going to stop him. Half of me still wants him to be redeemed, because even in this book we see Solus has a lot of regret. It's not like he's just like all evil. And even in Trespasser, the way he speaks to a friendly Inquisitor, like he would love for them to be able to prove him wrong again. So it's very difficult. But then we also see him having these agents who are willing to kill themselves. He apparently says, like, to these spies in the Dreadwolf Thankyou, the Dreadwolf is going to, no one is going to be able to stop him. He's going to do whatever he has to bring forth his plans. So I think though his pride is going to be his flaw and something that we may be able to use against him. Even in the Dreadwolf Thankyou, he seems very proud of himself and what he can do. I think that's going to be his downfall. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is the future of where Dragon Age is going. There is just so much going on in Thedas. There is the Canary invading. There is the Canary, the Antam and the Ben Hasselhoff taking different sides. Kind of. Well, the Ben Hasselhoff aren't on Solus's side, but they don't want to get as involved as the Antam is. There is the Inquisition working underground. There are Solus's plans. There is also Tevinter, the Venatori, as well as demons lurking under the city. There is also the business with the Grey Wardens. There is also the business in Navarra with the Mortalitazi. Don't know what's happening in Ferelden at the moment. But there is just a lot going on. No wonder Solus is like finding it so easily to make his plans come true. I can't because as much as I don't side with him, I can see through his eyes. Like, look at the elves in his time weren't any better apparently. So see, that's kind of hypocritical to why he would want to bring them back. But anyway, like, if he looks at the world Thedas now, like, there's just so much corruption, and I guess it's exactly like the time that he lived in. But why then would he want to bring it back? Besides magic, I guess, and spirits and all that stuff. So I think the most prominent thing will be the Qunari invading Tevinter, Ravane, Antiva, Navarra. I guess those are the type of nations that we might be exploring. I would love to be able to go to like Parvolen or somewhere where the Qun live, because we haven't really seen that too much. Also, there's the Executors, which we don't know too much about, but they apparently, it seems like they are a threat a bit to Solas's plans, or at least to Solas, as he wants Charter. Don't mess with them. So I wonder if they're going to have a bigger role in the next game. We're going to find more about who the Executors are. Are they going to side with us? But I wonder if, as the protagonist, we're going to have to unite all these nations together. It's kind of what we did in Dragon Age Inquisition, but this is on a bigger scale. I think the only way to defeat Solas is to work together. Something really interesting that was in the streets of Minrathous, Neve replies to Minrathous is broken, and Neve says, I know, but you aren't the one to fix it. It kind of hints to me that whoever the protagonist is, they're going to have to help fix Tevinter, I imagine at the aid of Dorian and Maeveris. We also had many characters mentioned that were either NPCs, companions, characters that we've heard of or have been involved in with side quests, or family members of these characters. So some of them mentioned were Divine Victoria, who Solas saw at the party. Josephine Montelier is mentioned. Dorian and Maeveris are in one of these stories who mention Josephine, as well as Dorian mentions he currently has servants instead of slaves, and that someone in the south had an influence in that decision, which I imagine is the Inquisitor. But I like that Dorian and Maeveris are trying to do their best to get in good graces with the Imperium and are trying to actually do something. I imagine we're going to be seeing a lot more of them, or I hope, because I love them both. I love how they were both portrayed in this book. We have Philium, who is a distant relative of the Inquisitor if you are a Trevelyan. We have Genitivi, who is a scholar that we met in Dragon Age Origins in the Urn of Sacred Ashes quest. We also have, of course, Sidonie, which is a multiplayer character. We have Gat, who is in Bull's personal quest. We have Rassan, who was in the Dragon Age comics, I think it's Until We Sleep. She was a Qunari who tortured Isabella and kind of had like a name thing going on. Like their true name reveals who they are and how to stop them, I guess. So she says to Sister Lordine, in Genitivi dies in the end once Fenharel isn't Solas's name, it's a name that he called himself or other people called him. His name isn't even Solas. And then Sister Lordine says Pride, and Rassan agrees to that. So that was also like a big hint of something to do with Solas, but I hope we're going to see her again, because I did like her, even though she's kind of evil. We also see a relative to Eramond, who was that Magister in the Warden's quest who was trying to bring out the Nightmare Demon. We see a relative of his. Thea also makes an appearance in Herald Had the Plan, who meets Barb at the end, and of course Solas makes an appearance. So I think that's all. I'm probably forgetting some, but there are a lot of appearances in this book, as well as connections to each story. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the future of Dragon Age 4 in terms of protagonist. reading this book, I thought that it would be so cool. Like, I could see a lot of options where they could go. It seems that we're going to be, the next game's going to be obviously taking place in Tevinter, so we can either play as, like, I thought it would be really cool, like in terms of origin stories, if we could play as like a thief in Minrathous, a city elf. We could even play as a Magister, or like it would be really cool if we could have origin stories set in different nations. So if we wanted to be a crow and from Antiva, we would have our origin story there. Or we could be in Ravine and be a pirate, or even one of the Lords of Fortune, because they're mentioned so much in this book. It would be cool to be able to play as one of them, and that way they get to talk and explore more of that faction. It would be really cool to be part of the Mortalitazi in Novara if you like had an origin story where you were maybe a newcomer, or maybe you've been there for a year or two, and you start your story there and then work your way up to whatever maybe the Inquisitor hires you, finds you because you're good at your job. So that would be really cool. Even with like the Ben Hassaraf, if you wanted to play as a Canary or an elf, you could have your origin story as a spy in the Ben Hassaraf, so you could get a chance to like learn more about that faction and be in this faction. Because I imagine, like, because in Inquisition we kind of had backgrounds, but we didn't get to play in them. So I could totally see like you were just like part of the Antivan Crows. And also it'd be so cool, like for some reason I'm thinking about Skyrim, and I know Skyrim is a really big game, so they probably couldn't do it because, again, like I do want them to focus on the story. That's most important, but I think it'd be so cool if you could, like, in another world where this was like Skyrim, you had the chance to join a faction, or again, your starting game was in this faction. It would be also cool to be a Grey Warden again, to do with Ramesh and his quests, but then they would have to work that way in. I think it would just be so cool to be able to have, I love having different options, and they all like connect to being scouted by a Inquisition agent, or running into something where the Inquisition is involved and then they get recruited by the Inquisition. Or maybe the Inquisition is just like their own separate thing going on. Speaking of the Inquisition and the Inquisitor, definitely in this book it seems like the Inquisition is still running. They are very much still wanting to stop Solus. They are still working underground. They still have their connections. So in terms of the Inquisitor being a protagonist, I would love to see that, but I don't know if they could do it. Like, it would be like a powerful move, kind of, just because each game has had a different protagonist, but the Inquisitor has such an important role in terms of their connection to Solus, in terms of what they've previously been involved in. So I could even see them having like a dual protagonist if the Inquisitor is involved. It is so important to be able to customize them and us be able to control them. So even if they had like a separate part where the Inquisitor, where you take control of the Inquisitor, but something that I don't want, like I'm sure other people don't mind if their Inquisitor took this road, is my Inquisitor just sitting behind a desk. Like, I don't see, because of how Trespasser ended, even if you disbanded or didn't disband the Inquisition, everyone ends up behind that desk and ready to stop Solus. The Inquisitor seems determined to stop Solus. So it very much makes sense that they have like a physical role, or they could have a physical role in the next events of Dragon Age 4, whether it just be a few side quests, a big main quest, the end quest confronting Solus. I think that's so important to have the Inquisitor to be the one to confront Solus. It would just be so good, because it would like the Inquisitor is the one who like felt betrayed by Solus. It would bring so much emotion, and I can totally picture the scenes. I would love to see more dialogue showing emotion. Just say if they couldn't make the emotion physically on their face, at least portray it in their voice. Just like they did in Trespasser when the Inquisitor was shouting or got emotional at the end. I love that, and I want to see them, when they confront Solus, really be able to yell at him, to cry. I want to be able to play my Inquisitor the way I and the player actually feels, and other players feel as well. And they could totally do that. So even with the protagonist, I would love them to have a lot of emotion in their the way they express their feelings and the dialogue. I love it when characters feel like real people and really get angry, because then it gives you options. Like, you can be angry, you can be sad, you can be neutral or funny. So the delivery of the lines are really important. So yeah, seeing my Inquisitor not just stuck behind a desk, even losing their arm, it would be such an awesome move to see them, to see that not stopping them. And I feel like a lot of people would just be so proud of their Inquisitor, seeing them not backing down. I like the feeling of, oh no, my Inquisitor isn't retiring. My Inquisitor is going to take charge of this. They are still a badass, no matter what Solus did to them. But I would still be so happy with a new protagonist. That is even something I'm looking forward to. Yeah, I just really like my idea of being able to play as a crow, or Multilitazi mage, or as a magister, or as a city elf who kind of rises up against what the Tevinter has taken from them. Seeing as what's happening with Fen'Harel's army, I don't know if we'd be able to play a protagonist within Fen'Harel's agents. We could be a spy, we could be an elf who was wanting to do good by elves, but then they decide that this is too much. But I'm just excited to hear more about the protagonists. I can't wait. And the companions. Oh my god. Oh. I love all the characters in this book. I'd like to see more of Lucius, and his cousin. Lucius is now known as the Demon, and apparently there's a Magister who is part of the Venatori or sympathizing with them, who is currently going to watch him and watch his moves. Yeah, so I really hope to see more of him, as well as the leaders of the Talons. I want to know more about them, and I want them to have a bigger involvement in the next Dragon Age game. I want all these factions who are currently being hurt by the Qunari to step up and maybe join the Inquisition, or help out the Inquisition, or help out the protagonists in some way. It seems like in terms of previous Dragon Age Inquisition companions, we could be seeing them again, since the Inquisitor's inner circle is mentioned in this book, and the Inquisition is still running, so that's really cool. Varric is still a Viscount in Kirkwall, so we could be seeing more of him, and I always love Varric. I'd like to see a Qunari companion, I'd like to see Barv, but I'd also like to have new characters as companions that we haven't read about in the book, because it's always good to see a fresh face and learn about them, and not like have a history knowing what they've done. So that is the end of my thoughts on Tevinter Nights. I obviously loved it. Everything that I wanted. I'll probably go back reading this book again, just because I feel like I've missed some stuff, but I definitely recommend this to any Dragon Age fan. Even if the book has already been spoiled for them, it's just good to read, to get hyped up about something, and you may see things that other people may not know, come up with theories on your own. There's a lot of theories that can be made from this book, so every Dragon Age fan can enjoy it. Again, it's separate stories. It's not like a full book, so you can read chapter by chapter whenever you want. So thank you very much for watching this video, and again listening to me ramble about Dragon Age. It is my favorite topic to talk about, and I am looking forward to seeing what Dragon Age 4 has to bring us, whether there'll be another book in the coming 2 years. I think they said 2022. I'm willing to wait as long as possible, only because I just really want them to focus on the game, and the people working on the game definitely have the potential and the talent individually to be able to come up with something great. So I'm not really fussed on when the game's coming out. If that meant that they made something that they're happy with, and you know, they went over the game again and again, made sure everything was up to standards and you know, they were proud of it, then I would be willing to wait. I'm fine with replaying Dragon Age Inquisition for the... I don't even want to say the number because I play it so often. I hope everyone is taking care of themselves. So yeah, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.
Oh, I'm in the book! I am reading the shit out of this!